Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. My name is Dr. Glenna, and this is the Happy Hour. Thank you very much for joining me. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd, and I'm very glad that you are here. Again, my name is Dr. Glenna. I'm a mental health therapist with a private practice in Torrance, California, where I specialize in anxiety-based disorders and emotional abuse recovery. I am a licensed clinician and a mental health educator, and I'm very glad that you are here with me today. The Happy Hour is a free weekly webinar where you get to learn all types of tips and tools from a psychodynamic standpoint. The happy hour is not to be used in lieu of any other mental health services. If you are experiencing any mental health symptoms, please contact a licensed clinician, your primary care physician, or a psychiatrist. The happy hour is intended to be for informational purposes only. So it means that you come and you learn and you take some things with you and you implement it so that you can have some real sustainable change. And I am accepting new clients. Always throw that out there. I am currently accepting new clients. You can visit www.drglenna.net, drglenna.net, and I would love to meet with you if you are in the state of California. And we are going to jump on in. If I was a slide, there I would be. I think we are all good. All good. Welcome to the happy hour. Today, we're going to talk about why growing doesn't mean you have to cut everyone off and why we think we do. This is an epidemic. This is one of those things that people have heard the term going no contact and they've taken it and ran with it. People have heard the term you got to set boundaries and they literally take it and they just run with it. And they think that setting boundaries and going no contact means building up blocks and walls so that no one can get to you, no one can talk to you. As soon as someone says something or does something that you don't like, no contact, don't talk to me, block party, just block them on social media and on your phone and all these things. And when we grow, you do start to notice things about yourself. You do start to notice differences in other people. You will outgrow other people. That is a reality that does happen. But the solution does not always have to be, I have to cut everybody off. Okay. The solution doesn't always have to be that you can't be friends with anybody that you grew up with, that you can't talk to any of your family. Okay. It doesn't always have to be that. So I wanted to touch on why growing does not mean you have to cut everybody off. And why do we even think that way? Why is that our go-to? Why do we lean on that? My name is Dr. Glenna, and while I am not afraid of spiders, I do believe that we should not be in the same domain. Fun fact. Why do we choose the people we choose? My lists are never exhaustive. Just because it's not listed in what I say does not mean that it doesn't exist or it might be true for you. Familiarity over health. We are often drawn to what feels familiar, not necessarily what is healthy, not even necessarily what we want or desire, but more often than not, we choose what is most familiar for us. We choose the dynamic, the types of people, the environment, the financial situations even. There's The Big Leap talks about it, and Mind of a Millionaire by T. Harv Eker talks about the person's relationship, your mental, your internal relationship with money will determine how you are with money. If you believe you deserve a lot of money, then your ceiling for how much money you believe you're supposed to have is going to be high. You will always keep yourself at that ceiling. And then you have a bottom, like I should never go below this. You'll never allow yourself to go below this. If your ceiling is relatively low, then you will consistently self-sabotage yourself to keep yourself at a position that allows you to not have money. You'll make money, you'll spend it. You'll run up credit cards. All of a sudden, circumstances will come. You don't even realize you've actually done something to create the circumstance. What am I saying? I'm saying that humans tend to choose familiar circumstances, people, environments, internal feelings. We choose circumstances that give us the same internal feelings that we are familiar with. Not necessarily what's best. It's not even necessarily in alignment with the direction that we want to go in, but this is what's familiar and this is what we go to. Human nature, a trait whether we like it or not. You just got to do something about it, which is why you're in today's happy hour. And we often build relationships with people who match our unhealed patterns. Okay, so we're not talking about money specifically today. We're talking about relationships more so, but we tend to build relationships with people that kind of vibrate at the same level. We don't just choose people, we choose experiences that feel emotionally recognizable. We choose circumstances. We choose friends. They're a little bit shady because we are familiar with shadiness in friendship. We're familiar with people in close proximity and close emotional intimacy letting us down. So when we see an early trait of a person being shady or being mean or being malicious towards us, we don't use that as a stop sign, or a red light. We ignore it and we continue to engage with people because they are in alignment with the emotional experiences, the unhealed emotional experiences that are most familiar to us. Transference. Transference is a therapeutic term. It means projecting unresolved feelings from past relationships onto current relationships. Okay. It's when you experienced a teacher in the classroom, right? A person in an authoritative figure, and the teacher was just not supportive. So then the next time you have a teacher, the teacher tries to be supportive, but you reject it because you are projecting those feelings from the other person onto this one. I'm still hurt by that teacher, so all teachers are going to get it. Right? Or I believe any person in a position of authority is not supportive. So I'm going to react in a way that pushes them away based on my unresolved feelings and my beliefs about the world around me. So, reacting to a partner like they are a parent is a form of transference. If you are angry at your mother for not being supportive, we hear about women talk often about how their mother was their first bully. The mother, as soon as the young lady started to develop or kind of come into her own sense of fashion, it was the mother that was the first one to, your hair ain't cute like that, and you need to put some clothes on. Mother was the first bully. If you experience that, then you might transfer that into your next relationship, where the belief about women is that they are unsupportive. And you're transferring all of your unhealed feelings, or you might have a father issue. Maybe your father abandoned you, or your father was abusive. You are transferring those unhealed feelings and recreating that experience with an emotionally abusive partner. Okay. Reacting to your partner like they are your parent because your feelings around your parent are unresolved, or even, being angry at your mother, being angry at your father, your primary caretaker, and then unconsciously taking it out on your partner, creating conflict with your partner, or creating scenarios because you expect to be at odds because you're always at odds with your primary caretaker. So reacting to a partner like they are a parent, expecting abandonment. If you've experienced abandonment in your life, transference is when you tend to transfer those feelings or that expectation or that experience onto something that reminds you of your previous abandonment. Or assuming rejection. Maybe you experience a lot of rejection. Maybe, you had three good friends and then all of a sudden they all flipped out on you. So anytime, like again, last week I was talking about the Usher and Chris Brown tickets. God bless you if you got yours on a pre-sale yesterday. But maybe because you've experienced a rejection previously, now the group chat is chirping about the Usher and the Chris Brown tickets, and you are highly sensitive to being rejected. You think that they are going to reject you because you actually experienced that previously, and now you are transferring those experiences onto a current scenario. Sometimes we are not reacting to the person, we are reacting to the past. Again, we're talking about, why do we feel the need to cut people off? Like, why? Why? How come we think growth requires us to just dead people and dead relationships? Why do we feel like that? Sometimes we are not reacting to that actual person. Sometimes it is transference, and we are reacting to something that happened previously. And we are thinking that this scenario is close enough to the hurtful experience that I had before. And so I need to take action in order to protect myself. Let's talk about the phases of change. Kubler-Ross, there's a Kubler-Ross model. It's phases of change: shock, denial, frustration, anger, depression, discomfort, experimentation, and implementation, which is on the next page. Let's talk about how this relates to relational patterns. When change happens, our first response is shock, denial. Like, wait, what? Such and such is leaving the company. Whoa, they are? Oh my goodness. No, right? Normal. depending on the nature of the change will depend on the intensity of the shock, the intensity of the frustration, right? Whenever I talk about this model, I always talk about how I had a pair of black boots. They're my favorite. They're ride or die. They're a solid pair of black boots. And then one day I wore them to work and the side of them split. Okay. So I always go through the Kubler-Ross change model using these boots. First, I was in shock. I was like, oh my God, I am dressed for work. I am out of the house at my office and the side of my boot split. Now, my clients are gracious, but if I come in there with raggedy clothes, it kind of messes with the branding a little bit, right? So, first things first, I'm in shock and I'm in denial because I'm like, no, oh my God, I'm too far from home. I don't have time to go home and change. These are my favorite boots. They can't be dying on me. Shock, denial, right? Frustration. Now I'm frustrated because I'm like, what am I going to do for the rest of the day? I have to shop. I have to find another boot. I'm frustrated. The tension between what I want to happen and what is actually happening, right? The tension between the reality that change is imminent, there's nothing I can do about it. And the anger around, I didn't ask for this. I wasn't prepared for this. And then there's depression, there's discomfort because now I'm upset because I really like these boots. They were solid, solid pair of knee-high boots, right? And then there's discomfort because I have to go find another pair. A black boot is a staple. I have to go find another pair. There's discomfort in trying to make the adjustment. And then there's experimentation where it's like, all right, well, let me check the website. Let me see what's on Macy's website. Let me see what's on Nordstrom's website to see if I can find a pair that I like. Maybe I can find another leather pair, heel not too high, not too low. Start to experiment with different ways of doing things. And the next one is implementation, which it's like now I'm going to go find something and I'm going to implement it into my wardrobe, right? So just using that as an example to kind of run through what the phases of change are, the phases of change in relationship. Okay. So there's something that is happening in the relationship that makes you think, oh, I need to do something differently. First, there's something shifts. Someone does something, or someone does something that you don't like, or it makes you uncomfortable, and you're like, it isn't that serious. Right. The shock of it, the denial, you might start to minimize the issue because you're trying to alleviate the need to have to change the relational dynamic. So the first part might be shock, minimizing, no, 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 it can't be that. And the denial looks like continuing old patterns. You saw what you saw. They did hurt your feelings. They did disappoint you. You saw what you saw. But instead of taking action, addressing it like managing conflict, we're going to just back away from it by continuing the old patterns. If I just ignore the fact that I told them I was going to send my money for the tickets and they said they was only buying four and there's five people in here. If I just ignore it, then everything will be okay. Right. And we stay in familiar dynamics. We stay, again, we choose people around us because something is familiar. It's not necessarily that we want it. It might be in complete conflict with what you want for yourself, but we choose people that are familiar to us. And so we start to stay in the familiar dynamics, even if they are unhealthy and hurtful, even if we know this is going to require some change or something needs to change. And we avoid necessary conversations. Okay. Part of our shock, part of our denial is to avoid unnecessary conversations. Sorry, to avoid necessary conversations. We just don't want to have it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to talk. I just want to fawn. I just want to be small. I just want to not have to deal with confrontation and deal with conflict management. And then we have our frustration, right? And then we start to realize like something about this relational dynamic, it's not working for me. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. And then there is an increased awareness of what's not working. And now I'm irritable and now I'm resentful because anytime that something needs to be said and we don't say it, we become resentful. It's a natural chain reaction. And the relational impact, the conflict increases. Because what did you think was going to happen when you were angry and irritable and hurt by this person and you didn't say anything? The conflict increases. And then we have a lower tolerance for behaviors that you once accepted. Because when we're irritated, ain't nothing funny. If I'm irritated, if we have conflict, ain't nothing funny, ain't nothing cute. No. So now we have a lower tolerance for things that we previously were kind of okay with. It was no big deal. We could turn a blind eye. But this is often where people start to feel the urge to cut somebody off. This is when it happens. Okay. It's like something happened, whether I'm growing and I'm learning more about myself and I'm realizing, dang, I did not set healthy boundaries. And then I go to set a boundary and it doesn't work. They don't respect it. And then I minimize it because I try to ignore the fact that they blew right past my boundary. And then I end up angry and I end up irritated. And this is where it's like, you know what? I set my boundary and they didn't listen. I'm going no contact. I'm cutting them off. I'm not inviting them to my birthday dinner. We getting Usher and Chris Brown tickets and we not going with them, right? We start to dead people. And it's usually from a space of, I don't know what to do next. Okay. And then we keep going. There's some sort of change and we keep going. And then there's an emotional heaviness, a grief, a loneliness, a confusion. Okay. Because there has been change and I don't know exactly, there's change in the relationship. There's change in me and we are no longer in congruency anymore. And there's something that's off. And so I start to pull back. I start to question the relationship altogether. Now I feel disconnected because wait a second, I'm changing, I'm growing. We're not in alignment. I said I wanted to set a boundary. I said I wanted to do things differently. We're just not in alignment. And so I'm going to pull back. Notice how none of it is healthy communication. All of it has to do, the response has to do with questioning the relationship and acknowledge feeling disconnected, but not having a conversation. And then at some point, if we're really starting to move through the phases of change and try to do things differently in our relationships, we got to try new ways of relating. We got to start setting small boundaries. We got to test the communication instead of shutting down, instead of like when your best friend, interrupts you or grabs your perfume off the dresser without asking permission. You test the communication like, hey, do you mind asking me first? I'm going to let you use it, but how about you ask me before you kind of grab my things like that, right? And the relational impact is some relationships improve while others feel strained. This is where we start to make the determination about what direction we're going to go in the relationship. Not when we're in denial, not when we're ignoring what's happening, not when we're frustrated, not when we're angry, but when you've tried to experiment with a different way of doing things, because some people will be receptive and some people won't. Some relationships will feel strained moving forward. And then we start decision making and integration. So now we have a clearer understanding of what our own needs are, clearer understanding of the other person's needs and just kind of who they are. And then we start to make more intentional choices. And what happens in our relationships is we're able to redefine our relationships, right? Because now it's coming from a different place. And we start to choose closeness based on alignment and not obligation, right? So sometimes the desire to cut people off, it isn't clarity. It's just a stage of change. It's just where you are in terms of accepting this version of you and who they are. Where are you? Like, are you still in denial? You're like, no, but that is my best friend. We've been best friends since we were in the third grade. No, she is my best friend. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around the idea that this person is not good to me or they're not good for me or we're growing in a different direction. Okay. But when we start to integrate different skill sets, then we're able to redefine the relationship. We're able to find closeness. It's not always cutting people off. It's not always about, oh, I had a moment of clarity. I need to dead them. Sometimes it's just where you are and you haven't worked through the phases of change for yourself. And so it seems tempting to handle things from a place of, I just got to dead everybody. The hallway experience. I use this phrase with my clients all the time. Um, why do we feel like cutting people off? Why do we do that? Why is cutting people off not always necessary? Sometimes you are just in the hallway. The hallway is a space where you've outgrown who you used to be, but you haven't fully built what's next. So you don't necessarily want to go back to, partying every weekend or I don't know, whatever you used to be, whatever person, you don't want to go back to cussing people out every time somebody says something slick to you, right? You don't want to go back to being a complete like hermit and just being completely quiet and let anybody say anything to you. You don't want to go back to that completely, but you don't feel fully connected in terms of what direction is next. You haven't mastered whatever skill set will bring you into alignment with the next version of you. And the hallway experience can be very lonely. It can be very uncertain. There's a lot of vulnerability because there was a certain level of confidence and security in who you used to be. and the people that you surrounded yourself with. You knew, oh my God, that's my cousin, that's my best friend, that's my auntie. Like you had a certain level of comfort and a certain level of security in who you were and how you used to operate. And then you start to grow, and for a minute, you're like, well, I don't do that anymore. I'm not sure what I do. I don't spend my weekends that way. I'm not sure how I spend my weekends. I don't like I don't want to argue with everybody, but I do need to speak up, and we're kind of in this in between stage. Okay? And in that in between stage also it is tempting to say, well, everybody can't go with me. Well, I got to cut them off because they just don't understand. And, I'm not doing that. So I got to cut them off because they're just too different from me. And we start to come up with every reason in the book to kind of cut off these past relationships that we've had. And that's not necessarily the solution. What you're feeling may not mean the relationship is over, it just may mean you are in the middle of adjusting. You're just in the hallway. So that's probably also not the time to say, I'm going no contact with everybody. I'm deading everybody. No, no, no. Black Pride is probably not the time to do that. And again, recognizing where you are in terms of the phases of change. Like, am I in shock about my own change? Am I angry about the fact that I have to change? Am I trying to test the waters and experiment with the new me, which is probably about the hallway experience? I'm trying to figure out, who am I? What version am I going to be next? And what does this look like moving forward? And again, in the hallway experience, it is tempting. It is really tempting to say, well, that person is no longer in alignment, so I'm going to cut them off. But that's not necessarily the case, right? We want to get fully baked. We want to wait until we're all the way in the other room. We want to master a skill set. We want to get better and stronger at a certain thing. And then we can determine whether or not cutting somebody off is necessary. Because oftentimes, cutting somebody off completely is not necessary. And also, in terms of the experience and what it's like and what we're feeling like in the midst of things, when you are healing and you're growing, you will experience these things. And oftentimes we don't talk about it. And so when we experience it, again, we take it as the other person is the problem. Right? The person in my life, they're the problem. And really, what's happening is we're grieving who we were versus what we expected. We're grieving the version of ourselves that we don't want to be anymore. We're grieving what we thought we had. We're grieving the relationships that we thought we had. We thought we had healthier relationships, and we looked up and it's like, oh, these are all toxic. Like one of the toughest ones is when you look up and you realize, oh my goodness, I grew up in a very unhealthy family system, and that's the family I got. So there's grief around what you didn't get, grief around the trajectory of the direction that things are going based on your current reality. There's grief. And oftentimes we don't talk about that. When we talk about the healing journey, we always are like, girl, take a bath and it was great. And I came out emerged like a butterfly. And we forget that the caterpillar went into the cocoon and turned into mush before he becomes a butterfly. So there's grief, and it's often not discussed as grief. We often don't discuss it as you are grieving a version of yourself. You're grieving what you thought those relationships were. You're grieving what you thought you had. There is disappointment. When you start to develop a higher level of self-awareness about who you are and what your needs are, there's disappointment around realizing, I in my yesterdays, I chose people that were familiar with my most intense emotional state. As I grow and heal away from that emotional state, and I develop more of an awareness around who I am and what I need and what my emotional needs are and my recreational needs are, I look up, and the people in closest proximity to me do not have the capacity to meet those needs. I love my best friend, but oh my goodness, this person does not have the emotional capacity to meet my needs. And it is disappointing. It is disappointing when you wake up and you realize, like, oh, I have a need for this type of affection, or I like my feelings validated in this way. And then you're like, oh my goodness, I have a nuclear family system that does not support that. Oh no, I have selected a spouse and married a person that does not have the capacity to meet these needs that I just learned that I even have. And there is disappointment. It is a part of the process. It's not cute, it's not convenient, but it is a part of the healing process. And then there's anger about your unmet needs or the past dynamics. When the veil comes off and you learn some terminology and you're like, oh my goodness, y'all been mistreating me the whole time. Y'all been taking advantage of my kindness the whole time. You all have been taking advantage of the fact that, I will give money to my cousins or aunties or siblings or whatever. You all have been taking advantage of me this entire time. Now that I'm aware of what boundaries are, now that I'm aware of what healthy communication is, of what conflict management and conflict resolution is, I see it in a different light and I am angry about the experiences that I've had. And I'm angry at myself for the stuff I let slide. Because why did I let somebody do me like that? This is a normal part of the healing experience. And then embarrassment. Embarrassed at, oh my goodness, I was so down bad. Oh my God, I was down bad. And whoo, I'm in somebody group chat getting tore up, right? The embarrassment. Why did I tolerate that? Why did I allow myself to stay in that position? Why did I stay in that relationship? Why did I not leave sooner? Why didn't I speak up for myself? The embarrassment that comes when you realize, or why did I get so angry? Why did I have such a big, disproportionate response to something that was happening? Embarrassment and resentment around, just resentment is a bit of an emotional imbalance. Like, I was doing this and I wasn't getting what I needed, and I kept asking for what I needed, and the resentment builds and builds and builds and builds. And oftentimes, when you grow and when you come into a healthier version of yourself, there's resentment around the times where you try to get your needs met, the people that just outright refuse to grow with you or to make any attempts to meet your needs, and loneliness. As you grow, as you develop different interests, as you start to talk differently, as you're trying to figure out where people go in your life and in your world, it can get a bit lonely. When you get to the point where you're like, well, I'm not going to argue with everybody, and the only way that they know how to communicate is to argue. So, wow, I haven't had conversations with some of the people that I used to interact with very often. It can get very lonely. And another experience that people don't talk about is the pendulum swing. It's when people gain new awareness, they often swing to the extreme. Okay. So sometimes a person that didn't have any boundaries, as they start to grow and learn, now their boundaries are super rigid, right? They're like, well, the last time, I let somebody slide, they start ice skating. So now nobody comes in. I'm not letting anything happen. Or they go from over giving, like, oh yeah, I hand out money and I buy expensive gifts. And I give you the key to my apartment. You can stay in my house as long as you want to completely shutting down. I don't do anything for anybody. I don't buy gifts. Nope, I don't do that anymore. No one stays at my house. No one gets a ride in my car. No, they go from over giving to just completely shutting down. Or they go from having some level of tolerance to just being completely just rejecting everybody, some level of tolerance and empathy and compassion, because maybe it was too much, to all of a sudden they have zero tolerance for anybody, zero tolerance for circumstances, natural circumstances, zero tolerance for just kind of things that happen that maybe aren't supposed to even happen. And what is happening here when the pendulum is swinging from one extreme to the other is your system is trying to correct what was out of balance for so long, right? So, what are we talking about? When you grow, it's not a requirement that you have to cut everybody off. Why do we think that? Because we are experiencing all these big feelings and we think that the problem is the people around us. And the pendulum swing is like, if I don't do things the way that I used to do things, if I go the complete opposite direction, maybe that will prevent me from experiencing um, any pain that I have previously experienced. If I just go in the opposite direction, it will save me. Okay. Or if you're experiencing anger and you don't even know where it's coming from, then again, we think it's the people. The people are the problem. So we start to think we have to cut everybody off. But oftentimes, that is not the solution. The solution is to acknowledge some of these things that naturally happen when you are going through the healing and the growth process. Why do we think we have to cut people off? It's the perceived solution. It's what we think. Like, if I have all these feelings, if I'm working through the phases of change, if I'm confused, if I'm frustrated, if I'm angry about how things are going, I start to think, if this relationship caused pain, I got to eliminate it. We just start to associate all of the things with the people, and we don't realize that there's so many other layered dynamics happening in the background as you're healing and as you are kind of identifying the people that are around you and the quality of the nature of the relational interaction. Why do we think we have to cut people off? It feels safe. It feels safe. Removing the person, it feels like removing the problem. How many times have you heard people say, my life would be just fine if I don't have to deal with them, if I don't have to deal with my kids, my parents, my siblings, my neighbors, where we assume that the nature and the epicenter of all of our problems is the other person. And so it feels safe if we can just pluck and remove that person out of our world. Why do we think we have to cut people off? Why do we even think that? Because we are emotionally overwhelmed. So when our feelings become too intense, too unfamiliar, when we have a lot of unprocessed feelings, again, like I mentioned on the last couple of slides, there are other emotional experiences that are happening for you. And if you are not aware of them, and if you won't slow down and kind of give room and space for those experiences, then they become very intense. Then the emotions become unfamiliar. What is this? Why do I feel this way? And unprocessed. And the brain starts looking for quick relief. Quick. I got all these emotions. I got all these feelings. I mean, I'm going to therapy and I'm reading the book, but I got all these things stirring up. Cut them off. It's the people. If you can just, your brain will tell you, if I can just isolate, everything will be okay. And it's a quick fix. But really, what's happening is there's layers of other big emotions that are happening in the background that we just don't necessarily know what to do with. And that leads me into the next one, which is a lack of emotional skills or even cultural expectations. If you were never taught how to tolerate dysfunction or discomfort, if you were never taught how to tolerate discomfort, you don't know how to tolerate discomfort. You were taught to ignore the discomfort, avoid the discomfort, cut all that crying out, suck it up. You were taught not to emote, not to express how you feel and ask for comfort. And no one gave you instructions on this is what you do when you have the big feelings on the inside. If you were never taught how to tolerate and sit with discomfort, you don't know how. And so we start to immediately say, well, what can I do? I can't do anything about what's happening for me internally because I don't have the emotional skills to do that. So I have to try to manage my external environment. If you were never taught how to communicate your needs, yes, you do have emotional needs. If you were never taught how to communicate said needs, then your solution is cut everybody off because I don't know how to articulate how I feel. I don't know how to feel vulnerable enough to even tell somebody that I need something or that I need support. I've never been taught this language of assertive communication. And if you've never been taught how to navigate conflict, if no one ever walked you through having a disagreement, having an understanding of how to navigate these things, then when conflict comes, your solution is I have to get rid of the person because you've now associated an external source with conflict rather than it's probably just a regular human dynamic. All humans are just different people with different brains and different experiences. There will be conflict, even with your most favorite people. It's normal and it happens. But if you don't know how to navigate conflict, the solution is the other person has to be the problem because we live with ourselves every day. And of course, we think all of our choices are sound and correct. And also, I put cultural expectation. If culture is beyond just race and ethnicity, culture is race, ethnicity, where you grew up, the region that you grew up, different high schools have different cultures. Southern California versus Northern California, has different cultures. Different cities have different cultures, right? So depending on where you grew up, if the culture of where you grew up, if the culture in terms of race and ethnicity, age group that you grew up in is just block them, then that's what you learned because you were not taught how to tolerate discomfort. You were not taught how to communicate what you needed. You were not taught how to navigate conflict. If the culture, the family culture that you grew up in is that everybody just hangs away, you can't even hang up a phone good now. Like you just got to press the button real hard, Anywho, but if your family of origin taught you when somebody does something that you don't like, hang up the phone, then that's what you learned in your family of origin to be normal. You did not learn to, oh, you know what? Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Let's take a couple days to kind of sit on it and then let's go back and let's talk about it. And then also, cutting people off can be a trauma response. Cutting people off can be a trauma response. This means you learned along the way that you can't rely on people, that you're safer without other people. And so you learned that avoidance, protection, emotional shutdown is what will keep you safe from potential emotional harm. And that means you actually experienced some sort of emotional harm. You experienced something that left you feeling unsafe. And now, transference, anything that comes close to even looking like that, you use avoidance to protect you and you shut down emotionally. It's a trauma response. So your whole nervous system is thinking that it's keeping you safe by eliminating people that might look like somebody where you experienced a form of trauma before. Try this. What should we do about it? Try this. Learn the new language, assertiveness. There's different types of ways of communicating. There's being passive aggressive, there's being aggressive, and then there's being assertive. Passive is I'm just going to be really small. I'm going to pretend like everything is okay. I'm going to pretend like I don't have any needs. Passive aggressive is I'm going to tell you that I like something or don't like something, but I'm not going to tell you directly. Right? I'm going to tell you that I'm upset, but I'm not going to tell you directly. So I'm going to walk in the house slamming cabinet doors. And when you ask me what's wrong, I'm going to be like, nothing. So my attitude, my body language, my tone of voice is telling you that something is wrong, but I'm not going to flat out tell you that something is wrong. And then aggressive, the intention is to be intimidating. The intention is to be big and over the top and to make you feel uncomfortable and make you back down. Assertive is the sweet spot. Assertive is where we acknowledge how the other person feels, but we also say very clearly and securely how we feel and what we need with respect to the other person. It involves your body language, your word choice, and your tone of voice. So you pay attention. You can say, thank you, but I didn't need all that. And your tone is saying one thing, or you can say, thank you so much. I actually don't need everything here, but thank you. Speaking assertively is kind of that sweet spot. And so learning the language of assertive communication will help you use it more often and more frequently. Being able to assertively communicate to the people around you makes it so that you can effectively communicate rather than just cutting everybody off. That doesn't have to be the immediate go-to. If you are passive, 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 and you don't say anything, and then you roar, and then you're aggressive, and then they roar back. Now, we're not getting anywhere. And then they roar back, and you think that they did something wrong, and now we have a whole fiasco here. If you just learn to speak assertively, it is a language. It does take practice. It does take a lot of emotional regulation. But if you can learn to speak assertively, you might find that you don't have to cut everybody off, that you can just communicate what you need and how you feel. And you might run into people that will just respect it and honor it. Number two, see people in context, understand their capacity, understand their limitations, and separate intention from impact. Everybody is walking around with their own little personal tornado, going on around them, right? I always say, sometimes it feels like I'm in the tornado and I'm just spinning around next to a cow. Everybody is going through something. Everybody has their own collection of big, scary memories. Everybody has things that they're worried about, ways where they feel inadequate, or, like I want to get ahead. I should be further in life, or, I should be bigger, smaller, richer, poor, whatever. everybody is walking around with their own personal experience. When you see people in context of whatever they have going on, whatever their emotional capacity is, whatever their limitations are, that actually doesn't have anything to do with you. It helps you to not personalize a person's behavior, even if it is, mean or, or uncomfortable towards you. See people in context so that you start to realize, oh, my brother was really rude to me, but you know what? My brother actually is really having a hard time. And this whole situation has been kicking his butt for a really long time. Okay. So see people in context and allow a little bit of grace wherever necessary, whenever possible. Separate intention from impact, right? Being able to say, well, that wasn't their intention. Impact and intention are two different things. A person may not have intended to be malicious, but the impact of it was harmful. But being able to see that was not their intention. They may have harmed you, they may have done something, but it was not from a place of malice. It may have been from a place of, maybe they just didn't know any better, or they didn't know that it was even going to harm you. Doesn't mean that you excuse it. I'm not saying that you don't get apologies or have tough conversations where you need to, but looking at it from this perspective can make it so that your go-to isn't, I have to cut everybody off. If you believe that someone's impact was harmful and their intention was to harm you, then naturally you're going to believe that the only way to keep yourself safe is to remove yourself. But if you can see, this is a person that really loves me, is my best friend, coworker, favorite cousin, whatever. They really love me and they really care about me. They did something, their action was impactful in a way that was hurtful. But this person's intention is never to harm me. So I can go back to number one, use assertive communication to talk about how I feel so that we can resolve things and move forward in a different manner. It does not always have to be that I cut everybody off. Number three, adjust based on relationship quality. Closeness should be based on quality, not title. As you're growing, as you're learning more about yourself, the nature of the relationship, the level of intimacy and proximity will shapeshift because your intimate and close relationships should be based on the quality of the relationship, not the title. So if you have a sister, it would be great if you were close with your sister. But if you and your sister really don't see eye to eye, you don't even like the same things, then we're not going to force closeness. Everything does not mean cut off, but it also does not mean that you have to force a relationship that probably shouldn't be. So we can adjust people. Sometimes people can, in different seasons, it happens. Sometimes people can be further away from you in terms of relational proximity and just emotional closeness. And sometimes people can have seasons where you guys get really close. That is okay. It does not always have to be that everything is cut off. It doesn't need to be that black and white. We can adjust accordingly. Set boundaries. Boundaries are the conditions at which people have access to you. That is Dr. Glenna's bootleg definition. Boundaries are the conditions at which people have access to you. You can come to my house. I would love for you to be here under the condition that you call before you come. Okay. Define the limits. Help people understand what you're okay with, what you're not okay with, what you're comfortable with. Make sure that they know, define it. It's not everybody's responsibility to read your mind and to just know, right? Sometimes culturally we kind of grow up in the same areas or the same ways and so we move the same, and that's great. But everybody has little nuances and that is okay. And reduce emotional access where needed. There will be times where based on the boundaries that you have to set, you have to say, "Oh, I can't. I got to pull back just a little bit." As I'm growing, as I'm learning about myself, I'm realizing I actually don't have the emotional capacity for all of the family tea. So I do have to reduce my emotional capacity because I'm trying to preserve it for something else. But it is your responsibility to set boundaries. Differentiate you versus them. Learn to separate your emotions versus their emotions. You are not responsible for everybody's whims. It is not your responsibility to make sure that everybody feels safe and chipper and happy at all times. You can care about somebody without taking full responsibility for how they feel. It is not your responsibility to make sure that everybody is comfortable. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep somebody else warm. Learn to differentiate what is their responsibility versus your responsibility, even with people that are good for you. It's like, you have that friend, and like, friend, you can call me to talk, and that's fine, but you have a level of responsibility for how you manage your own emotions and how you self-soothe. It can't be that every time you get upset, like you're on the horn, like you got to be able to differentiate you from them. Tolerate discomfort without immediate action. Crazy concept. Because those of us that are highly reactive, and I'm going to send that text right now, I'm going to call that person, or we need to have a conversation right now. Tolerate discomfort without immediate action. Not every feeling requires a decision. Sometimes you can just experience the feeling, experience what's coming up for you, and that's it. Just let it ride for a little bit. You don't necessarily have to make a decision or take action or do something about it immediately. Not every feeling requires confrontation. You don't have to go head up with every single everything that comes up. You can see something, you could peep game, you can feel something, and then you can just sit back and just process the experience and process the feeling. And also, not every feeling of discomfort requires disconnection. Just because you feel uncomfortable, just because somebody that you care about hurt your feelings or let you down or disappointed you, your favorite friend didn't come to your birthday dinner, it does not require disconnection. There are other options. Sometimes the most growth happens when you stay present instead of reacting, instead of jumping into action, instead of dogging this person on social media. Sometimes the most growth can happen when you just learn to tolerate it. You can say, God, this hurts my feelings, or I'm really frustrated, or I'm disappointed in how things played out. And maybe I don't need to take any action right now. Let me let it breathe. Let me drink some water, eat some tacos, lay down, go to sleep, and I will revisit this in the morning. Slow down before the first thing is I'm cutting everybody off. Move from all or nothing to both and thinking. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be both. It can be and. Okay. Shift from they're good or bad to, well, they do have strengths and they also have limitations. Two things can coexist. People can love you and they can still disappoint you. It happens. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make is thinking that somebody that's close to us would never disappoint us. And based on the relationship, it probably doesn't happen very often. But the reality is everybody's human. People can be meaningful in your life without being everything to you. You can have a life outside of them. You can have experiences outside of them. That way, it also reduces the expectation that you place on that one individual. But we want to move for either they are this and they are my friend, or they don't do this and so they can't be my friend. We want to shift away from that. And we want to say they can disappoint me and they can still be my friend, right? Now, there's limits, there's boundaries. I'm not saying just, take any and everything. But we don't want to be so quick. We don't want that to be our go-to. As soon as you do this, you're out of there. Number 8, build new, healthier connections while maintaining old ones with limits. You do not need to replace your entire social circle overnight. You do not need to replace your entire social circle overnight. As a matter of fact, if you are replacing people every year, you got a new group of people at your birthday dinner, then we need to talk. I'm accepting new clients. Come talk to the lady. I'm the lady. You don't have to replace your entire social circle overnight. You can slowly build new, different, healthier connections while you maintain the old ones, while you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how close can I be? Where is this relationship? They're not perfect, but they're still a good person. Like, what do I do with these past relationships that I've had while still expanding my new environment, while still adding new friendships? Okay. What ways can I set new boundaries with the people that maybe I didn't set healthy boundaries with before, while at the same time building a new group of friends, building a new group of coworkers, a new exercise group or something? You can do both. It does not need to be one or the other. You don't have to completely eliminate everybody out of your old life while you're moving forward and trying to bring people into your new life. And grieve without making any immediate decisions. Sometimes the urge to cut people off is actually grief. It's disappointment. It's unmet expectations. Okay. You don't have to make any permanent decisions in a temporary emotional state. So just grieve, just acknowledge, like, ah, that hurt. And I'm just going to sit with it. Because again, oftentimes we're trying to avoid these layered emotional experiences that we're having instead of actually processing those feelings or just talking about it or getting those feelings out. Grieve without making any immediate decisions. And the immediate decision that I'm talking about is cutting people off. Okay. Grieve the disappointment, grieve the unmet expectation, but do not jump to, I have to dead the whole relationship. And revisit relationships with new awareness. Now you know more about yourself. You know more about people. You have a different lens in terms of how you look at that person and the way that they present themselves. So revisit the relationship with just a new awareness. What role does this person realistically play in my life now? They may have been your best friend since the third grade, and maybe they are into some things that you're just not into as an adult. But what role can they play in your life where you are? And what level of access feels appropriate? Maybe they party in a way that you just don't party. Okay. So maybe they can come to your house under the understanding that, hey, we don't do that here. And maybe they'll be like, all right, because I want to be friends with you more than I want to be able to do that at your house. So, what level of access feels appropriate to this situation? And then try it, right? Communicate it, give them the opportunity to show up for you. And then some ongoing questions that I want you to continually ask yourself: who am I feeling the urge to cut off right now? Who am I like, man, I'm about to block such and such. We are done. Never again. Next, what emotion is underneath that urge? Slow down long enough and be honest with yourself and say, well, actually, I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling like I can't trust them. I'm feeling disillusioned. I thought it was going to be this and it turned out to be something completely different. And is this about the person or is it about my current capacity? Is it really about what's happening with my emotions? Is it really that I'm scared of being abandoned again? Is it really that I'm scared of being disappointed? I'm scared of not being seen. I'm scared of not being included. Is it really that the other person is so bad? Or is it really about how I'm feeling and what I have going on the inside that is unresolved? And finally, pick better apples, identify unsafe people. Go back and look at the happy hour from Wednesday, January 28th. It's on my YouTube page at Dr. Glenna LCSW. Strengthen your ability to select and or to identify, to select, and engage with emotionally safe people. Okay, that is what that whole happy hour is about. It's about identifying safe people. What are the traits that we look for in safe people? And then how do we select them? How do we engage with them? How do we build relationship with them? And then how do we maintain it? What does it look like on an ongoing basis? So go back and rewatch that whole happy hour because I talked about that explicitly. And that is what I have for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm more than happy to stick around and answer a couple of questions if you have any. If not, feel free to go ahead and log off. Again, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next Wednesday for the happy hour.